Hi, Rosina. I wanted to talk to you about an article I read in NEA called Teacher Burnout or Demoralization, What's the Difference and Why It Matters. It's for a class I'm taking online through Learner's Edge, but the article was really interesting because it was talking about the difference between burnout and demoralization. And I guess when I first read it, I kind of felt like I understood the difference between the two. And I think I still do, but what's interesting is, we know teachers leave the profession for various reasons, but what I found interesting was the main difference is burnout is kind of on the teacher's responsibility. Like, it feels like something the teacher is doing or not doing. It's about all of their workload and all the grading they have to do and meetings and emails and all that stuff. They just get burnt out of just all of their work, versus demoralization is more from external factors that teachers are leaving because of the direction of public education, just the demands of the standardized testing and more things like the critical, when I guess people are critical of education because students aren't meeting the standards in tests, things like that. We have all this pressure, and then our curriculum, it gets narrow because they want us to focus on all of the objectives that are on the test versus just what we know is good curriculum. So those were kind of some of the big points of the article. And I know that, you're going to be a third-year teacher, and I'm going to be like a, 20-year teacher, but I still feel, that the workload is increased, and I feel burned out sometimes. But I think you feel less powerless with burnout because you feel like it's things you have some control over, like not grading every assignment that you give and things like that. So I guess I'm curious what your thoughts are about just the two, or if you experience any of it.
Yeah. Well, I think my first year was really tough because I was a traveling teacher, and so I don't know, you probably look back to your first year and you don't really know what to expect or what to do. And I felt that just having that on top of being in 5 different rooms and not having an organization system, I just felt like I was running around frantically all the time. So I feel like just the first year I was so happy to have support, and I think that's kind of what kept me sane. I don't think if I went to a school that I didn't have teams to work with, I don't think I would have stayed, just because I know I could have done that all on my own and then been traveling and trying to figure out organization, and then also what to teach, what are the objectives and all of that, and done that all on my own. I think that would have been just way too much. I think year 2, obviously, it was like, okay, I've done this now 1 year, but I still struggled. And I think that has to do with, again, the traveling piece and working with different room settings and knowing where everything is.
And then you had different whiteboards and technology in each room.
Yes, the technology didn't always work, and that was frustrating. But I think my mindset had to change if I wanted to keep going. I mean, there are definitely days that I didn't want to come and whatnot, just because I was tired, and there was really a lot of things out of my control. So I think I was just like, well, if the technology goes out today, I can write on the whiteboard. I always just had a backup plan. But I think in terms of workload, yeah, like the homework, grading all of that, as well as grading tests and quizzes, that's something that I want to work on, just because there's just so many students within the class, and I think making it more online, or I don't know, where you're not sitting there and doing feedback quizzes, going through those really quickly. I mean, it just, all of that adds up. And then I was also taking my master's class. So I think just being an educator, you're constantly how can I move up? Well, I should be taking courses and then teaching. It's hard to figure out where to focus, as well as curriculum wise. How can you be creative without it taking up so much time? Because when I was creative, that took, an hour, 2 hours to create a lesson or an activity. And I know, like, once you get that under your belts, you can use it then again the next year and whatnot. But I think, like, yeah, these first few years are really hard because you're just trying to figure out, like, who are you as the teacher, and, like, what are the things that you want to use or resources, or how do you want to get to your students. I think that's what I'm still trying to work with. And then there's obviously all the other stuff. I mean, I feel like phone calls didn't really happen. I did more emails. And that was just because at the end of the day, I was like, I don't really want to do a phone call right now. And
So they take a lot longer.
Yes.
You know, email it, and plus you can
Yeah.
script what you say, and that makes it easier. But I'm curious too, because you did just get your master's.
Yeah.
I mean, in math education, like,
Yeah.
so your education is very fresh. Mine is 30 years old because I got my degree in 1988.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious, like, I just don't remember having conversations about, like, what to do, or just the fact that public education wasn't valued in some respects. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of blame sometimes on, like, the teachers and, like, the school system for, like, failing kids, but I think it's way more than that. But I'm just, well, because I think it comes not just, we see them a lot, but I think it comes from a lot of kids struggle because of what's been going on the first 10 years of their life.
Yeah.
A lot of turmoil and things like that.
Yeah.
And so, like, we can't always fix all those things. And so, like, No Child Left Behind, or just
Yeah.
other things like that. It's like, at some degree, by the time we get them in high school, it's not like a lost cause, but it's tough, you know? So,
Yeah.
but I'm just curious, like, from your master's, did they ever talk about, like, all this, like, all these initiatives, like No Child Left Behind, or, like, all those
Yeah.
things? Like, I mean...
They did. They went through and they said, like, this is how it affected education and all the different policies that were created. But we didn't, I mean, in terms of, like, math education, we didn't talk about specifically how, well, maybe we did, like, how No Child Left Behind
Yeah.
affected, and then, like, how the classroom changed, and then also talking about special ed, and how that's, like, changed the classroom. I think that's something that can be really tough, is, like, figuring out the accommodations and, yeah, not taking blame as a teacher for when your students fail, but when they reach high school, it's because either they're misplaced.
Yeah, that happens a lot. We know
yeah.
that. I mean,
Yeah.
how many kids, well, did you have kids that moved down this year?
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
Yeah,
I'm trying to
had
think.
5 kids.
Yeah, I bet I had a couple too, and I feel like we try to, you know, keep them, but
Right.
they're just, it's hard. I mean, if they fail all of middle school math, then it's hard to start out in high school and keep going.
Right.
But hopefully, with the way they changed the placement for from eighth to
Yeah.
ninth, I'm hoping that will help. But yeah, I don't know. I guess I try to ignore a lot of the, like, news and, like, attacks on teachers and this and that.
Right.
But I know, like, I don't know. You have, again, younger friends and things like that. But,
Yeah.
like, I mean, I even have good friends that don't really value, like, teachers. They do, but they're like, they still, like, oh, teacher, it's a great job. They get, 3 months off in the summer, and
But
it's like they don't really understand.
What goes into the whole profession. And I think as a student, before you even become a teacher, you just kind of think, oh, I'm just going to teach my mathematics or my core subject, but then you don't realize, like, no, you're actually creating curriculum, or you're going through and creating assessments, and you're also emailing, and you're also trying to develop relationships, and you're also trying to make sure that every student is following along.
I know. I feel like it's harder. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know, again, but, like, when I can remember times in school, it's like, I think teachers pretty much taught out of the textbook.
Yeah.
And, they wrote the notes on the board, obviously, because they didn't have, like, smart technology and PowerPoints and things like that. But, I mean, it basically, like, I think they just used the tests and quizzes that were in the textbook, and they
Right.
always used the problems. I mean, it was rare when you would get a worksheet, or, I mean, I don't think any of my math teachers in high school like really went outside the box, but it's hard to know. I mean, it's a long time ago, but I mean, now I feel like we are always trying to create something that's better, which is great. And I feel like we're trying to like always reach kids, you know, and do more for kids. But
I think there has to be some sort of stopping point.
yeah, I hope it's still recording is what I was looking at.
Yeah,
Okay. Sorry. But I don't know. I think that's part of the direction. But I think that, so then it feels like we're getting burnt out because we have these things we want to do. But I kind of think that comes from that external forces of we're expected kind of, or that's like what's good teaching, which I'm not saying we shouldn't do that, but it's just, I don't know. I guess trying to find the balance sometimes is tough.
Right. Like when can you say that, hey, my lesson is good?
Good, like not good enough. And I know we always like tweak things and like.
I think that's fine, but I just think that recreating everything all the time or saying I need to add this activity is just. I think that's why. I think that all of that just becomes teacher burnout, and you're not taking care of yourself. So, and I think that's like. I have a friend who taught 2 years and she's done, and she said it's because of the parents.
Okay.
And I think like there's less of us going into teaching, and obviously some of the reasons are, well, the expectations, low pay, and just the amount of work and effort you put into this day in, day out. You bring it home, you have to go back, as there's no stop.
I know, I agree. And I know some people would argue, like in business world or whatever, like sometimes they work long days or 60-hour weeks, and I mean that's normal for teachers.
Right.
But I feel like the difference is that they're compensated.
Right.
I mean, they're paid twice as much as we are, right? I mean, probably.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying anybody should have to work that much, but at least, you know.
And usually their excuse is, well, you work only 10 months out of the 12 months, but I think teachers work over the summer. I'm doing that right now, preparing for the next school year.
Right.
And I'm not getting paid for any of those hours that I'm putting in.
And lots of teachers have jobs in the summer, too, besides trying to do some extra planning and curriculum work and trying to do new things and that kind of stuff. But,
And I think about, like, the teachers that are coaches. I mean, it's like they play so many roles. And, there's not... I mean, and just to get by. Yeah,
that's true. And you're kind of almost expected to take on another role with teaching. Like I was lucky enough my first few years of teaching that, you know, my expertise is gymnastics. And when I was in different districts, like when I was in Burnsville for 3 years, they didn't even have a gymnastics team. Yeah. So like I didn't get pulled, you know, to do that. I mean, I did coach like middle school track and field and stuff and help with that. But I feel like when you get hired, you're kind of asked, well, what else are you going to do for our school? And it's like, it's a lot already just to teach, you know, then add other things on the plate. I don't know. I kept track, I think 2 or 3 different trimesters, a couple different years of the number of hours I did outside my contractual day, and it was 100 hours per trimester. So that equates to about 7.5 weeks a school year. Well, that's kind of your summer vacation, you know? So it's not like we're getting that time, you know.
No,
we're working it during the 9 months or 10 months, but I don't know.
And I know that, you know, when people say, you know, why do you love teaching? And it's like, well, for the kids, developing relationships. But I mean, I think the issue now is that schools don't have funding, so they pile more kids into the classroom, and that developing relationships piece becomes fewer and fewer.
And then our workload is harder and harder.
Right. Exactly.
Because the more kids you have, the more different, you know, things you want to bring in to meet their needs and their interests, and so the more kids you have, the more different types of kids and different needs that they have, which is all fine, but it just adds up. And I guess at the end of the day, it's good that we both still want to teach and want to make a difference, and I guess that's the bottom line. I hope that education can kind of come around and start funding the way it was 25 years ago. I mean, yes,
Right.
there's always been challenges, I think, in education, but I think that
Yeah.
budget piece has been huge. You kind of hit the nail on the head there by
Yeah.
saying, it's so underfunded that they keep piling more kids.
Right.
Plus, then they spend the money on things that maybe aren't as important. I mean, I feel like they're updating schools to make them,
Well, and the
really nice, and
technology aspect,
technology.
But I think then there needs to be more coaching